We've talked about some insane laws on this channel in the past, although those silly laws have largely been relegated to a single state, country, even city. I'm going to need all of you to make sure you're sitting down for what I'm about to tell you, because the shocking revelation threatens to rock your very core. It's not just local governments that are completely f***ed up, it's the federal government as well. And by this, we mean the federal government, I assume, of the United States, because Kevin wrote today's episode, who is an American. And yeah, I read it, Kevin writes it. That's how we roll here. I know it's really hard to believe, but sometimes the United States government institutes policies that are so asinine, nonsensical, or downright dangerous that they defy explanation. Yeah, I mean, governments do this all the time. I'm really trying to pull an example from my own country right now, but I can't because I'm not that quick. But there's insane shit that I come across all the time, and you're like, why would it be like this? Why? Hopefully you've all taken a minute to compose yourselves after that bombshell. I know it may be hard to accept, but the government really is out of its goddamn mind sometimes. For most of our viewers, this will be a sad reminder of the reality in which we live, while for Simon and the rest of our international friends, this may be a delightful bit of schadenfreude as they laugh at our country's stupidity. Yeah, maybe, but also, as I just mentioned, literally every country has stupid shit where the government's like, why is this? Why? Why is this a law? What's going on? Why does it have to be like this? So let's kick off these comedic festivities by turning the clock all the way back to the year 2001. Perhaps sometime in September. Oh, okay, that's where we're starting today, are we, Kevin? Just before we continue the video today, I do want to say that it's brought to you by our longtime friends over at Squarespace. Who are Squarespace? Well, they are the all-in-one website platform for anybody who wants an amazing website with basically no effort. It takes no time. I built my website in maybe 3 hours. Is all it took. Squarespace is not just a website platform, though. It's your ultimate tool to stand out and succeed online. Whether you are a budding entrepreneur or a seasoned pro, Squarespace have got your back. Squarespace blueprint AI and SEO tools. With that, you can create a personalized website in a breeze. I mean, who doesn't want a website tailored to their brands and optimized for every device? Plus, the integrated SEO tools ensure that you're easily discoverable by your audience. It's a bit of a secret weapon for your online success, isn't it? And now let me tell you about flexible payments. Making checkout seamless for your customers has never been easier, from accepting credit cards to offering buy now, pay later options like Afterpay and ClearPlay. Squarespace has got all of the bases covered. It's all about providing convenience and flexibility to both you and your customers. And of course, the Squarespace courses, whether you're an expert in your field or just starting out, Squarespace empowers you to create and sell your own online courses easily. From uploading videos to setting prices, it's a one-stop shop for turning your knowledge into income. So, if you're ready to take your online presence to the next level, head to squarespace.com/blaze for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, don't forget to use the promo code BLAZE to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. And now back to today's video. The CIA and FBI weren't allowed to share information. The FBI is the United States' premier federal law enforcement agency for investigating and preventing acts of domestic and international terrorism. The CIA is the United States' premier foreign intelligence agency, or according to their website, the world's premier intelligence agency. We'll see what MI6 has to say about that, shall we see? No, it's the CIA. Look, it's America. It's huge. They have infinite money to do shit. It's the CIA. They're right. They're right. Realistically, they're probably not wrong about that. Yeah, bang on. Given the designated functions of these organizations, it would certainly make sense for them to share information with one another. After all, if the CIA gathers intelligence that the FBI could then use to prevent acts of terrorism, it seems unthinkable that they wouldn't share it. Yes, on the face of things, this seems insane. Because you can imagine the CIA being like, yeah, we've interrupted we got some signals intelligence that Osama bin Laden's gonna hijack some planes. Let's not tell the FBI. What?
Kaboom?
Yes, Rico. Kaboom.
Or at least it seemed unthinkable until the release of the 9/11 Commission report. The report placed the blame for the success of the airline hijackings on a wall of bureaucracy that had been erected between the CIA and FBI, essentially barring them from sharing information with one another. This raised the very obvious question of why the hell would this have been the case? There were lots of different policies involved, and the limitations on sharing information extended to other intelligence organizations as well. But the most important policy was the 1978 Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, that was passed by Congress after the public found out about the CIA's Operation Chaos. Though Richard Nixon usually takes the blame for all of this, Operation Chaos was actually created by his predecessor, President Lyndon Johnson. I have no idea what Operation Chaos is, and I don't know why I haven't made a video about it, because Operation Chaos is a hell of a good name for a video.
Don't do it. No.
Nixon greatly expanded the program, but still, it wasn't his idea. Chaos was a secret, illegal CIA surveillance program. Oh my god, how have I not done a video called Operation Chaos, the illegal CIA surveillance program? That is literally clicks waiting to happen.
That's bait.
Used by presidents to spy on American citizens to find out if they had any connections to communists overseas. It's also not to be confused with COINTELPRO, the FBI's secret illegal surveillance program that had the exact same purpose and actually predated Chaos. Wait, so one's CIA, one's FBI? These programs were created because the president simply didn't understand the public response to the Vietnam War. American involvement in both world wars received nearly unanimous bipartisan support, and yet hundreds of thousands of people were out in the streets protesting in opposition to the Vietnam War. Now, it seems pretty obvious to us that stopping Hitler and the Nazis from literally trying to conquer the world was far more important than sending American troops to the other side of the world to fight a proxy war against communism for no particular reason. Well, wasn't the thinking at the time, and I could be way off base here, so I'm sure people in the comments will let me know, but wasn't the fear, like the Red Scare, that communism was taking over the world, that capitalism as a system was ideologically opposed to communism, and that the two were at loggerheads and one system was going to win? Capitalism obviously won, but the fear was communism could have won, so they saw it as sort of like communism trying to take over the world, right? Like, I know it sounds like not right to us today, but wasn't that the thinking of the time? And then that seems like justified, and why people didn't, and why the presidents were maybe blind to why there was so much, problem with the Vietnam War. But neither Johnson nor Nixon could make sense of any of this. Obviously, these protests had to be the result of foreign interests infiltrating the United States, and so all the illegal spying on the civilian population began. Even though Johnson started Operation Chaos, Nixon greatly expanded the program. By the time he resigned to avoid impeachment, the CIA was spying on over 300,000 American citizens. It's more incredible that they had the resources to do this, especially back in the day. Like, computers were fucking basic shit. Like, that's a lot of people to be keeping files on. Fun fact, none of the protest organizers or activist leaders were found to have any ties to communist or other foreign agents. They just thought the Vietnam War was a bit stupid. Anyway, following the understandable outrage over being betrayed by the government, the people demanded reform, and Congress actually stepped up and passed FISA. FISA, FISA, I don't know, it's before my time and American. The new policies regulated procedures for the collection of foreign intelligence on American soil and how that information could be used. They didn't strictly forbid the CIA and FBI from spying on Americans, they just made it more difficult. Over the years, this bill received multiple amendments, and other bills were passed to place further restrictions on how the information could be used. The end result was the erection of a seemingly impenetrable wall between the CIA and FBI. It wasn't impossible for them to share information, but it was a bureaucratic nightmare, and most of the people involved didn't even know the proper legal mechanisms by which to do so. Okay, so while it seems to have come from a place of craziness, it actually kind of makes sense if you put yourself in the position of the people at the time. Right? Sort of vaguely. This resulted in both the CIA and the FBI each having half of the puzzle pieces that would have been needed to potentially prevent 9/11 from having happened, and it actually got pretty embarrassing. In the year leading up to the attack, and by sheer coincidence, two of the hijackers wound up living with a reliable FBI informant. I don't know this story. That's crazy. The informant's FBI handler was aware that two Saudi men were renting a room and taking flight lessons, but he never even asked for their names because nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, the CIA was well aware that the two Saudi men, Khalid al-Mindar and Nawaf al-Hazmi, had attended the Al-Qaeda conference in Malaysia before coming to the US and settling near San Diego. Al-Qaeda conference makes it sound so official. Companies have conferences. There's there's YouTube conferences. And what's this one for? Al-Qaeda. Yeah. No, they've rented out, what's that big convention center near Disneyland where VidCon happened? Anaheim Convention Center. What's here today? Al-Qaeda. Had the CIA shared this information with the FBI, the handler probably would have asked his informant for the names of his 2 flight enthusiast roommates. The good news is that the policies that once created barriers isolating the CIA and FBI from one another have largely been changed to prevent anything like this from happening again. The bad news is that restructuring all of these policies has once again made it trivially easy for the government to spy on its own citizens, except this time it's mostly legal. Yeah, because, like I said, the reason thinking at the time was let's stop spying on our own citizens. So they set this up and now they've taken it away and we're spying. Like, everyone's spying on everyone. I thought the whole thing with the Snowden leaks was that, or one of the many, many things with the Snowden leaks was that America couldn't spy on its own citizens, the UK couldn't spy on its own citizens, all of the Five Eyes countries couldn't do that, but they could spy on each other's citizens. So they were all spying on each other's citizens and then sharing the information in one of the crazy-ass legal loophole. America's bizarre relationship with marijuana. People in the US have some very strong opinions about marijuana. Some people absolutely love it, to the point that they have turned the fact that they smoke weed into their entire personality. Too far, guys, too far. Others non-ironically refer to it as the devil's lettuce. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use the term devil's lettuce non-ironically. It's always just as a joke by people who actually smoke weed, and claim that the deadly drug could send users into a murderous rage at any moment. How many times have you smoked weed and be like, you know what, I'm one step from a murderous rage? Fucking never. It's weed. That'd be like, oh yeah, no, I just have 1 beer and then I fly into a murderous rage. No, that takes at least 3 beers, for me at least.
4 beers. Oh no. 5 beers. Oh no. 6 beers. 7 beers. 8 beers. 9 beers.
Personally, I have no particular issue with it. Since the federal statute of limitations on marijuana charges is only 5 years, I'm comfortable saying that while I once enjoyed smoking up on occasion in college, I haven't done so in over 20 years. Yeah, no, I'm pretty pro marijuana. I like pot. I don't use it excessively. It's just, I don't know what the stat. Here is basically decriminalized. No one gives a shit if you're just taking weed. If you're smoking pot or taking drugs. Is if you try to sell it, there's going to be consequences. But if you're just a user, no one gives a allegedly I do it, just in case. This is the internet. It's a big group of people. The last time I really smoked weed, I had such a severe panic attack that I made my friends call 911. I've told this story before, but I once smoked so much weed that I had the only panic attack of my life, and it was not fun. I didn't call 999 because I was like, oh, I'm just going to die. I guess this is it. There's no point. Of course, by the time the EMTs actually arrived, I'd calmed down a bit, so when they measured my heart rate, it was only 185 beats per minute. These are still fast. Needless to say, that experience was enough to turn me off from ever partaking again, but it was really fun every other time, so I'm not going to give people over wanting to smoke, at least as long as they aren't getting high while driving, which is disturbingly common in the US. Yes, wait, in the US, isn't a field sobriety test or whatever you call it? They don't have a breathalyzer, right? So they make you walk a line and say the alphabet backwards. Here, every time you get pulled over, it's mandatory that they have to breathalyze you. So I've been pulled over I think only once, maybe twice. And I've been pulled over twice. I can't remember what the second time was for. I think it was just a random stop, because they were stopping everyone. Maybe they were looking for someone. But whenever the police pull someone over, they have to breathalyze you. So I've been breathalyzed twice. I don't drink and drive, so it was fine. But that's all they do. So if you're high, that's it. There's no alcohol on your breath, but you're like, woo! And it's fine. It's not fine. Don't do it. But apparently, it seems like you could get away with it, which is kind of wild. Although I'm unlikely to smoke weed again, I certainly could if I wanted to. After all, marijuana is completely legal for recreational use in Massachusetts. Holy shit. This is spreading, not to mention 23 other states as well as Washington, D.C. Isn't that half of America? That's awesome. But while half the country has legalized the drug, the federal government has not. Oh, is this the one where it's there's no banks? Was it a Vice documentary which was talking about banks or the financial side of the legal marijuana industry? Where it's no, it's just fat stacks of cash because no bank will take our weed money even though it's legal in the state because banks are all federal or something. Maybe they've solved this by now because this was maybe 10 years ago. But I found it interesting. So while local police would be unable to arrest me for smoking weed, the FBI or DEA absolutely could. That's already pretty bizarre for multiple reasons. First, it's weird that local or state police don't have the authority to arrest you for federal crimes. Really? I didn't know that. That is kind of weird. Pretty much everything that's illegal at the federal level is also illegal at the state level, so this basically never comes up, though it's still an incredibly bizarre policy to have. But it's also weird that the statement only applies to pretty much everything rather than absolutely everything. The fact that something can be legal within a state, even if it's not actually legal within the country, doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense, America. Do other countries do this? It's very weird.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny.
If I had access to the startup capital when marijuana was first on track for being legalized in the state, which sadly I did not, I would have done everything in my power to build a dispensary and make sure the doors were open for business the day sales became legal. Kevin, I think you'd have missed a trick. I don't know how it worked in America, but basically here in Czech Republic, it's been on the verge of being legal for a very, very long time. And I think maybe this year they'll finally pass the legislation which makes it legal, which would be cool. But there are already weed shops. And they sell like CBD. They're basically like head shops from, back in the day selling like old cannabinoids like this. And as soon as their big play is get there first so that when it does become legal, they are already there. They're already established with their like weird, imagery and all of this stuff just ready to go, right? That's what's happening. So if you're ready to go on day one, you're already too late. Being first to market is huge, and there was an absolutely fucking huge fortune to be made there. But what seemed like a guaranteed profitable business would have carried some risk with it, like the knowledge that the DEA could raid the store and arrest me at any time they felt like, despite the fact that I would have a state-issued business license that specified the nature of my store on it. Of course, the specifics of the policy that the federal government is hell-bent on enforcing make even less sense than there simply being separate state and federal rules for the legality of weed. As any stoner will happily tell you, all of America's founding fathers grew marijuana. Did they? That's awesome. In fact, King James demanded that the colonies grow as much marijuana as possible so that it could be shipped back to England. Blazing it up, England. I had no idea. You might immediately think, well, that makes sense, because surely King James must have been high out of his mind to think that he could improve upon the Bible, but none of these people were actually smoking it. As far as I can tell, they had no idea that using the plant to get high was even an option, because the strain they were growing had an exceptionally low quantity of THC. Oh no, King James, what have you done? They just needed as much hemp as possible to make itchy clothing and supply the British Navy with rope. Oh right, because of hemp. Yeah, fuck hemp. That's like the lamest use for weed ever. The demand for hemp was so high that some of the American colonies legally mandated farmers to dedicate a percentage of their land to growing it, while others offered bounties to farmers who did so. This all changed with the invention of the cotton gin, and throughout the 1800s, the demand for hemp decreased as cotton production ramped up. Yeah, I don't know, I've never worn hemp clothes, but I assume there's a reason that we like cotton, because it's nice. It wasn't until the mid-1800s that more potent strains of marijuana became known and recreational use started taking hold, mainly among intellectuals in the upper class. Yes, yes! I love it how, like, back in the day, it was like, who's getting high? Oh, just the upper class and intellectuals. Even though marijuana use spread slowly, by the turn of the 20th century, you could just go to your local pharmacy and buy some weed just as easily as you could buy heroin or cocaine. The good old days. However, there was also a major problem in the United States, which is that hospitals had severely overprescribed opiates to Civil War veterans. Jesus Christ, we've been overprescribing opiates for fucking ever. And by we, I mean America, but other countries also. But I meant we, humanity. Stop overprescribing opiates. It's a bad idea. People get all sorts of fucked up on that, and they think it's okay because it comes from a doctor. It's not. I saw that Netflix series, which I'm sure is entirely true.
Lies. Oh, lies!
The government started cracking down on dangerous narcotics, and for some reason, weed got caught up in all of this. Here's a fucking huge difference between opiates and weed. I've done both. Not recreational opiates, but I've been prescribed opiates, post-surgery. And you could see why people get addicted to that shit. Where it's you're just everything is fine. I'm in an awesome mood all the time. This is just brilliant. I don't care about anything. I'm just going to sit here and chill all day. And obviously that's going to be a bad time when you get addicted to it. Whereas weed, you're this is awesome. And then you're yeah, I don't need to do that. It's that's fine. It's just yeah, no, I don't know, I don't care. Seems very unaddictive. Whereas opiates, we know, are mega f***ing addictive.
I swear I'm not addicted to school, my bro. I can quit whenever I want, bro. I just use it to take off the edge.
I'm sorry if this is a bad take on drugs. I'm sure some people are like, weed's addictive or opiates used in the right quantities of this and that. Like, I know I don't have a perfect opinion on this. I just have an opinion based on my personal experience. Following the 1906 Pure Food and Drug Act, which already hindered sales by requiring products to list their ingredients and for narcotics to be clearly labeled as poison, marijuana was made effectively illegal by the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. It wasn't technically illegal, but the taxes were so high and numerous that they were impossible to pay. Where hospitals had previously prescribed the drug to patients with some regularity, now each hospital, doctor, pharmacy, and patient would have to pay ridiculous taxes for the privilege. The push to criminalize marijuana use was unsurprisingly based largely on racism. Okay, that is surprising to me. I mean, look, everything was super racist in the past. I know that, but how for this? Stronger weed had come to the US when Mexican immigrants moved further north during the Mexican Revolution. God bless them! And one particularly vocal anti-marijuana propagandist insisted that smoking weed could result in their white women having sex with black men. Fucking hell, the past. Holy shit. It was also publicized as turning people into vicious murderers, as if anybody who just smoked a joint even has the energy to get out of their beanbag chair, let alone go kill someone. Yeah, that's why I said it's like after one beer or like having a little bit of weed. It's like, nah, dude, I'm just gonna chill. It's just gonna chill. I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to get up unless it's to get a snack. According to one PSA from the 1930s, before the drug became illegal, quote, "Beware, this marijuana cigarette may be handed to you by the friendly stranger. It contains the killer drug, marijuana, a powerful narcotic in which lurks murder, insanity, death." This is nonsense. There are a couple of things here, beside it being a nonsensical scare tactic. To start, that wasn't a typo. Yeah, if marijuana was spelt wrong, it was spelled like marijuana. If Sam and or Lorelei, the editors for this channel, could put the image up of the ridiculous flyer on screen, the audience will see that the official spelling of the drug used to have an H instead of a J. The spelling was changed to make the drug seem more ethnic and scary, because why use facts when you can use fear? I mean, to be fair, yeah, I mean, if you're trying to get someone to take action, fear is way better than facts, dudes. Everyone knows, the politicians definitely know this. But more importantly, where are these friendly strangers? Yeah, I'm like, how often do you go outside? Someone's just like, yo, bro, got you a marijuana cigarette. You'd be like, sick, thanks. Sorry, marijuana cigarette. Sick, man, thank you. Appreciate it. Have a good day. That'd be awesome. Fuck yeah! PSAs like this continued at least into the 1980s, and every TV show aimed at children had at least one anti-drug episode in which this scenario was used as a major plot point. My entire childhood was filled with propaganda to make me believe there were adults in every street corner just handing out free drugs to children by the pound, but never in my life have I seen this happen. For some reason, I think, for me, my generation of UK kids, I was really put off pills. Like, pills were always like ecstasy and such, which I understand is also not very dangerous. But I feel like there was a commercial, like when I was a kid, of some dude who like was running around and he's like dressed as Batman, like he looks like Batman, and then he jumps off a building and he lands on the pavement below. And it's like ecstasy, you know, makes you think you can do things that you can't, or some shit like that. And that really put me off ecstasy. So I've never tried ecstasy, even though I'm pretty sure I'd love that shit. Anyway, the Supreme Court eventually struck down the marijuana tax as unconstitutional because you couldn't pay the tax until you'd already broken the law, thus violating the Fifth Amendment rule against self-incrimination. In response to this, Congress enacted the policy that makes the least sense of all of this. In 1970, they passed the Controlled Substance. I feel like I'm actually learning a lot today in America's episode, in this episode about America. Like, normally on Brain Blaze, I'm like, people are stupid. But today I'm like, fascinating history lesson. Officially making marijuana illegal for all purposes and labeling it a Schedule 1 drug. Is that like an A-class drug? That's what we call like heroin, cocaine. Cocaine shouldn't even be a Class 1 drug or a Class A drug. It should like crack, meth, that kind of shit should be Schedule 1, Class A. Like, pot? You having a laugh? I think it's like a C-class drug in the UK. C-level? C-class? C-class. Which is like, no one takes it really seriously. Just don't sell it. The definition of Schedule 1 is for drugs that have no acceptable medical use and the highest potential for misuse. What the f*** are you talking about? It's weed. Highest potential for misuse? Have you seen meth? Have you seen what that does to people? The worst, what happens to like people with weed, who smoke too much weed? They just seem to get a bit slow and speak like this, bro, for like the rest of their lives, even if they stop. I don't know what that is, but it's not great, but it's not what you say. I'm watching that Orange is the New Black TV show. I've never seen it before. We're watching it on Netflix. And I'm like, crystal meth. This is the most serious classification of drugs, and marijuana is listed alongside heroin, LSD, and ecstasy as Schedule 1 drugs. Again, LSD and ecstasy? Really? I've never done any of these drugs, but like, they don't seem like heroin bad. They don't seem like crack cocaine or crystal meth bad, do they? Or like opiates, other than heroin. Even if we accept that marijuana was miscategorized thanks to a decades-long smear campaign, why the fuck are cocaine, raw opium, and fentanyl only Schedule 2? Fentanyl is a Schedule 2 drug. It's worse than weed. Are you smoking fentanyl, US government?
You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
The 3/5 compromise is a bit depressing. I guess someone compromised over 3/5 of something. It's a bit depressing that of the things we've talked about today, this is the one that made the most sense. I guess I'm about to find out why it's depressing when I find out what the 3/5 compromise actually is. The United States' current constitution was our second attempt at creating a federal government, the first having been the Articles of Confederation. I believe I know this, and there were a bunch of like presidents before Washington, right, who were like presidents under this confederation thing. That first attempt was pretty bad, as the federal government was essentially weak and powerless. Judging by what we've talked about today, it seems that the federal government is best weak and powerless, because they seem to be enacting all sorts of crazy laws, like making pot worse than fentanyl. It became quickly clear that the Articles weren't going to cut it, and it's often stated that Shays' Rebellion in 1786 was the impetus for the Constitutional Convention. Okay, I have no idea what any of this is. How important the rebellion actually was is a matter of debate among historians, since the Articles were already known to be crap, but it's a pretty clear indication of some of the problems that existed. Revolutionary War veteran Daniel Shay led an armed rebellion in Massachusetts against the federal government. Since the federal government had no power to levy taxes and thus couldn't fund a military, they were literally powerless to stop the rebellion. It had to eventually be quelled by the Massachusetts state militia, who prevented Shay and his men from seizing the federal armory. When it came time for the Constitutional Convention, the need for the new federal guidelines to include provisions for taxation and a military budget were pretty obvious. However, they also needed to make sure that the people of each state would be represented fairly. This forced the drafters of the Constitution to address the elephant in the room: which people should be represented. How many seats in the House of Representatives and how many electoral votes each state would have was determined by their population, but counting that population was tricky. It was obvious that all free citizens should be counted. Oh no. Oh, and Native Americans who would be exempt from paying taxes should not be counted. But what about slaves? Wait, they were just like, you don't pay tax, you don't get to vote. What about all the poor people? It's the past. But what about slaves? Somewhat ironically, it was free states arguing that slaves didn't count as people, while the slave-holding states argued that they should still be counted. Is this to like get the voting numbers up or something? But then why would they want the slaves voting? Because the slaves will be like, yo, how about no slavery, please? Like, what the? Of course, that's not really a surprise. Oh, I just don't know enough about American history. You got to fill me in on the surprise, Kevin. By this point, about a third of the population of southern states was comprised of slaves. Oh, I see. Because it's not about whether they can vote or not. It's just about whether they have that many voters. Because that determines how many seats they get in the House? Something like that? In the big building where they all meet and discuss the state things together? Right? It's called the House, right? Or Senate? So, if they didn't count them, then the southern states would have very little power in the federal government. If they did count, then the free men in the southern states would have a disproportionately high amount of power. Slaves, obviously, still weren't going to have the right to vote. That makes no sense. And the government absolutely was not going to represent their interests, so the extra representatives and electoral votes their population provided would exist solely to give additional power to the people who sought to keep them enslaved. I got the feeling there's a Coke in my fridge. I'm just going to see if I can get that, because this coffee's not hitting.
Please give me Coke.
A few moments later.
No, sadly, literally the only thing in my fridge is a bottle of old pickles, which I should throw away. The solution, and part of Article 1 of the US Constitution, was that slaves would each count as 3/5 of a person for the purposes of representation. It's so weird. It was like the original form of gerrymandering, decades before Elbridge Gerry redrew Massachusetts South Essex District to look like a salamander. No idea what the this is. Gerrymandering is something about redrawing lines or something, right? I feel like I saw Last Week Tonight with John Oliver talking about that, but I didn't understand it. For that matter, gerrymandering is another government policy that doesn't make any sense. I mean, why people do it makes sense, but why the United States allow it does not. Partisan gerrymandering is not explicitly illegal at a federal level, leaving it up to the states. And for whatever reason, not all states believe that it should be illegal. What is gerrymandering? Oh, for anybody unaware, gerrymandering is the redrawing of districts to create unequal representation of different groups. Oh god, I don't know if that makes it any easier to understand. State legislatures have the power to redraw districts, and whatever party is in power will adjust the maps to ensure that they stay in power. Wait, they're just like, yeah, if we get this group of, like, Democrats over here into us, then we get to stay Democratic? That's a bit weird. How do those people feel about that?
We don't give a...
Effectively, the representatives get to choose their voters rather than voters choosing their representatives. It's not an exclusively American problem, but it is a predominantly American one. Gerrymandering is such a major part of American society that in 2023, the Wisconsin state legislature threatened to impeach a newly elected state Supreme Court justice because she said that the state's maps were gerrymandered. Wait, she can't have that opinion? To be clear, that wasn't some insane partisan opinion. It is an objective fact. If you Google most gerrymandered state, Wisconsin will be the first result. For a country that prides itself on being the land of the free, our elected officials seem awfully determined to rule their constituents rather than to represent them. But hey, when they redraw these absurdly shaped districts to ensure that they stay in power, at least they have to count everybody as a whole person instead of just a fraction. Yay! Progress! Thanks for watching. FISA, 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 I don't know. It's before my time and American.